The NFL, this collusion case that Mike Florio's been beating this drum on Pro Football Talk, that, hey, there's proof that NFL owners colluded. They didn't want these guys getting more guaranteed contracts like Deshaun Watson, and there were meetings held, and they talked about the trend line and how much guaranteed money and bonuses were going, and we got to put a stop to it. And that's why Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson all couldn't get these fully guaranteed contracts. And Mike Florio wants me to feel bad about it. I don't. Wants me to think it's a big deal. I don't. But a lot of this reporting is coming from, hats off to Pablo Torre, is coming from Pablo Torre. Let's listen to Pablo talk about the Russell Wilson text messages and how that led to this NFL owners collusion case. Play the clip.
According to this document, this concealed arbitration ruling in a landmark NFL collusion case, it was discovered that J.C. Tretter, quote, exchanged texts expressing frustration with Mr. Wilson's non-fully guaranteed contract, end quote. And the answer to what J.C. Tretter said that he wanted suppressed, according to this theory, is at least partly contained in a separate document. The transcript of a text exchange from July 8th, 2024, which was filed as part of this whole legal proceeding. And what I can now report is that J.C. Tretter, in a series of text messages that he sent to then Executive Director of the Union, DeMaurice Smith, repeatedly insulted Russell Wilson. At one point, he used an expletive that I will not say here. J.C. Tretter also called Russell Wilson a quote-unquote wuss. And then he said of Wilson, quote, instead of being the guy that made guaranteed contracts the norm, he's the guy that ruined it for everyone. End quote. Because what I'm told is that the owners actually used J.C. Tretter blaming Russell Wilson as evidence of non-collusion. Because what J.C. Tretter is saying there, to be very clear about this, is that the reason Russell Wilson didn't get a fully guaranteed contract is because he's not smart enough, not strategic enough to push hard enough for it. And not because the owners were colluding against Russell Wilson or Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray or the players. J.C. Tretter was blaming the player instead of the owners, and the owners were like, this feels like a very helpful bit of evidence for what we're trying to prove, which is that this case should be dismissed. And by the way, not unrelatedly, the case ultimately was.
So just for context, J.C. Tretter's a former Packers offensive lineman. The player president of the NFLPA, and he's the one criticizing Russell Wilson. And the owners use this to say, see, even the NFL Players Association president saying we didn't collude, it's just Russell was stupid. But this whole deal, this entire deal, bores me. I don't want NFL players with fully guaranteed contracts. The owners need some bit of leverage over them, as we've seen with Deshaun Watson and we've seen with countless players,
the whole NBA,
particularly in the NBA, Jason, the entire NBA. I don't want this. Yeah, I don't want this.
Here's the thing.
I don't want this.
So one player's upset over the other for not getting market value or whatever. I didn't really see a lot of proof that there was collusion. I see an accusation. Now, looking at this historically, there's only been one time that I can recall where the owners were proven to have colluded, and there was actually a legal action in reaction to that. That was in 1987 with Major League Baseball, that free agent class led by Tim Raines. Now, I remember this because Tim Raines was probably among the top 5 players in baseball at that moment, and he could not get an offer. In fact, a lot of players couldn't. But there was actual proof that, hey, we're gonna set the cap. We're gonna make sure that the wages don't go above this, and we're not gonna offer this much. All I'm hearing is one player pissed off at another player for, in his mind, not expanding his whole leverage. But Jason, I have to ask you something. Did we go back to 2015? What leverage did Russell Wilson really had He is now on his, third team in about 5 years. Is there any chance that maybe Russell Wilson just got the best deal possible at this current moment in 2025? That's my question.
Well, first of all, they're talking about Russell Wilson as he moved to the Denver Broncos. That's what they're talking about.
All right, so that changes
but
things.
He didn't have great leverage then, yeah.
Right, and the other thing is, I don't get this. Look, I remember certain player unions. This happened in baseball. They won't they don't want players giving hometown discounts at all, because they believe when the top level players take only 90% of their value, it actually depresses the wages for every other union member. I get that. But what is happening for Russell Wilson and his representation to take a deal that is not favorable to the other player union reps, Jason, I asked this question, is that alone proof of collusion? You're going to have to give me more evidence than that.
Here's the weird dynamic that I'm trying to understand even about myself is, why am I on ownership side? And I'm on ownership side because I think guaranteed contracts would damage the NFL product, what's left of the NFL product. I think guaranteed contracts have damaged the NBA. And it's why we have load management and guys that really don't care. And I think some of that is already creeping into the NFL. Instead of, and again, this is why I question myself, is like, I'm on the side of a bunch of elite billionaires and want them to have more power and control over the players. Yes, as a fan, that's where I'm at. It may not be logically consistent or logically moral or morally consistent. I don't know, but that is where I am. I feel like the players have too much leverage and the product is suffering. And as a fan, I don't want the product to suffer anymore.
Well, Jason, I think what you're saying out loud echoes the thoughts of a lot of people who may not want to admit that publicly, but I think a lot of people are sick of the player empowerment movement. And the player empowerment movement has dovetailed with this whole social justice warrior movement where they're wagging the finger at the public, and then they feel as though playing the games is an option. Look, I'm with you. I'm a fan. I always say about boxing, do I care about the health and safety of boxers? I guess, but if I really cared about it, my advice would be don't get into boxing. I want to see fights. I don't care about the sweet science. I want to see Donnybrooks. I want to see brawls. I want to see wars. Why? Because I'm honest and I am a fan. Fans have a right to say, you know what? I just only care about you as a player. I think people got sick of the whole more than an athlete movement because they understand it was phony, it was fake, and it was fraudulent. And all we know you is you're not our neighbor. We're not related to you. Play the games and entertain us. And that's a fair deal because they get paid a lot of money.
And that exactly how I feel and a lot of fans feel. And I sit here and say, and hats off to Pablo Torre. I'm really not trying to denigrate his reporting or what he's doing. But no one in the media feels like it's their job to represent the point of view of the fans.
The people, right.
And that's what bothers me. I want to play a second clip. Here's Pablo Torre and Mike Florio talking about the owners colluding. Play the clip.
Quote, there is little question that the NFL Management Council, with the blessing of the commissioner, encouraged the 32 NFL clubs to reduce guarantees in veterans' contracts at the March 2022 annual owners meeting, end quote. And now I will maybe draw, perhaps, hopefully, an obvious thought, and this was articulated to me by a union source. Quote, this is almost like the holy grail for the union. Here's 61 pages of gory details about how the league really works thanks to an independent judicial arbitrator. You should be screaming about this from the high heavens.
And that really leads to the why. Why would the union keep it quiet? Why would you not want to trumpet this outcome to the world? Why would you not want to let the world know we caught them with their hand in the cookie jar? We caught them. They just didn't eat the cookies, supposedly.
Florio and Pablo, I get it, but at any point, and this is like Florio's rise to relevance and building up Pro Football Talk, he was the anti-establishment guy. He was the guy telling fans things. He was almost the younger version of Florio was a lot like Peter Vesey, and then he sold out, and now, you know, I guess in his mind, he's a thorn in the side of NFL ownership on behalf of his sources that represent players. And so that's why Colin Kaepernick is getting screwed over, and they're colluding against Colin Kaepernick, and now they're colluding against players, and they can't get guaranteed contracts. And again, I was never on Colin Kaepernick, diminished the game, distracted from the game. And as a fan, I wanted the game to be front and center. I didn't think what Colin Kaepernick represented had any real importance. It was just about him. And now on this contract situation, I just don't see how any of this improves the game, improves the experience for fans. It just gives pampered, spoiled athletes more leverage against pampered, spoiled NFL owners. I just don't care.
Like what you saw? Hit that like button, subscribe, and check out the full episode by clicking the link below.